Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Welcome again to Whiskey Congress, and of course we have another whiskey for you to hear about and for us to drink. Chivas Regal. Steve, you want to tell the backstory?
Yeah, so this is the interesting thing. A buddy of mine who's out of state kind of gave me the heads up on this and said, hey, I saw a couple bottles of this available. Would you be interested? I was, I believe, smoking a cigar on my front porch after a couple or more cocktails and said, sure, absolutely. And I think I pretty much instantly sent him, some form of payment via Apple Cash or PayPal or whatever, and then proceeded to forget about it. I think it was before I went to Cabo. And then, so just the other day, this shows up. The box shows up on my porch, and I don't really know what it is. So I grabbed it today and said, I'll open this at work, and I do, and I open it, and it's a bottle of Chivas Regal. And it's a special offering from them. It's called Mizunara, Mizunara. It's supposed to kind of remind you of the Japanese whiskeys that we've had in the past. Okay. Like the Hibiki with the really nice bottle, and I think I get what they're trying to do. They use a Japanese oak to age the whiskeys in, so it's a blended Scotch. So they used a number of different single malt Scotches, blended them together for this. And for me, I give it a solid 88.
I give an 89.
Okay. I probably would have given it an 89 if the ABV was at least a touch higher, but that 80 just irks me for some reason.
You've made your position on that perfectly clear, my friend.
Yes, I mean
no, it's just your thing. You want
right.
you want the
I want a bang.
The bait, yeah.
And so, but yeah, I mean, the taste is nice and even. It does have that light, airy, sort of almost appley taste to it that you get.
A little
with
bit
Japanese.
of caramel is what I'm getting too.
Right, and you get that with Japanese whiskey. So I think they did a good job of presenting it as such. But it's for me, I'd like it to be a little bit stronger. The presentation is nice. They changed the colors up from the standard Chivas bottle, and so there it is.
Yeah. Okay.
If you see it in the stores, it's not too pricey. I think it was between $45 and $55 based off of what I sent via Apple Cash.
From what you can remember.
Right. So there it is. So if you see it, then maybe it's worth a grab. It's a little different. There's a little bit of backstory there in terms on the Japanese side. If you want to grab it, have it on your mantle, something to talk about. I wouldn't say go run out and find it right now. I'm sure there'll be plenty of it available. Although it was a limited run, so there may not be, it may not be that popular. So if you do see it, maybe it's worth the grab. But I wouldn't, go rushing to the stores for it.
As blended scotches go, I'd say it's pretty darn solid. I think we're on the same page. So you and I both decided that we don't know if the whole nation has Trump fatigue, but I certainly do. I'm just trying. I want to go as Trump free as possible today. We'll see if we can hang on to that plan. I'm sure it'll.
Yeah, I mean, not to say that the's not, worldly things to talk about.
There are definitely plenty
involving the White House administration, but we're just gonna.
You can get that anywhere.
Right. We're just gonna not talk about them right now.
So the new president of the NRA and how she got there is kind of an interesting story in and of itself, because Wayne LaPierre, my buddy, and Ollie North got into a bit of a fight, and Ollie North ended up leaving, showing that Wayne LaPierre is really running the show, and replaced her with a woman named Carolyn Meadows. And Carolyn Meadows was interviewed by, I want to say, a Marietta, Georgia station, and was discussing the fact that the Republicans had lost a seat now occupied by Congresswoman Lucy Mc Bath, whose son was killed in gun violence a couple years ago, in 2012, I think. Yep. And so Carolyn Meadows was talking about how she didn't win that seat because of her strong stance against guns, because the NRA has to claim that anyone who stands against or stands for gun control is going to lose in politics. She claimed that Lucy Mc Bath won for the simple reason that she's a minority and a woman.
Yep.
And I don't know. And then Lucy Mc Bath came back and said, actually, I won because of the things I did. And she didn't say, and you're a fucking scumbag for trying to diminish my...
Okay, all right. Well,
she didn't. I did.
I think, Lucy Mc Bath, obviously I didn't pay close attention to Georgia politics outside of the race for governor.
Right.
And kind of what happened there. But, it didn't take long to kind of read up on Lucy Mc Bath and who she was and what she was about. And, if you look at the demographics of the district that she's in, there is a strong black population, but I don't think that the people, because this would encompass like Marietta and some of the surrounding areas.
Right.
I don't think the people looked at that and said, well, because she's black, this is who we're going to go with, right? It wasn't because she was a black woman. I think, she came out strong against gun violence and she, community building and some other things that were really, some things that registered with the people in that area,
Sure.
people in that district and her constituents. And to just throw it out there that, they only voted for her because she's a black woman just shows you how disconnected that this Carolyn Meadows is. Now, Carolyn Meadows is 80 years old. She's
Right.
from Georgia. Her family has, deep roots in the state of Georgia, politically and in business. So she has that, the mentality of a person that's grown up in the Deep South, of an older white person that's grown up in the Deep South for, spent 80 years of their life there. And so this statement probably really isn't a surprise, whether it's you want to attribute it to her.
If I said that, would I get the white-splaining flag thrown at me?
Well, no, it's not a surprise if she's, one, she's the president of the NRA. And
True.
There's not too many assumptions that person.
By the way, I think she's only the president of the NRA because she's a white woman.
Well, there you go, right? And that would be interesting for someone, whether it was Lucy Mc Bath or someone else to kind of throw that right back at her.
That would have been kind of funny.
It's just like, well, they're only doing it because they're looking to get more white women
Right.
in the NRA. So, her statements, I think, they're pretty ridiculous. Are you going to say, "Oh, that's racist"? There's hints of it, right?
I think pretty strong hints.
Yeah.
I think it's
right. There's
she's only there because she's a black lady,
right?
You know how those blacks come out and vote for the blacks. That's basically what she's saying.
They love them some them, so we'll
Right.
let them have this one, and then we'll get it back. And
Right.
essentially what she said, right?
Yeah.
So do you go after her, demand that she be? No,
No.
It's the NRA. She's not getting, no one's getting rid of her. Right?
Actually, the worst thing to do would be to go after her and try to get rid of her because that would just give them free publicity. Not that they need that anyway, but
right. And you and I just have different. You have this utter disdain for the NRA.
I do.
I don't. I see your point, but I just think it's there's plenty of other places to waste your energy in terms of groups that you hate.
Yeah, my particular dislike for them comes from personal experiences of being forced to join them to be part of a sportsman's club, and then so I'd get their magazines and read the shit that they published and be like, okay, you're just
Right.
spreading fear and putting bullshit out there,
stoking the flames,
right?
And they are stoking the flames, and they definitely do that. I think it's like anything, it's a multifaceted entity.
Sure.
And there's some things that they do that I think are positive in the gun culture, I suppose. But they definitely have the political wing, and there's some things specifically like the government not being able to, research gun violence
right.
From a health standpoint, and the CDC getting involved or not being able to get involved through legislation that was backed by the NRA. I think that's one of the big clouds that hangs over the NRA for me. But beside that, there's other things that they bring to the table, and I think there's other things to criticize them for. But I don't know if I just don't have the same negative juju that you have.
Yeah, my opinion has been thoroughly stated, and I do stand by it. And like I said, I also spent more time in sportsmen's clubs where I had to listen to the bullshit going on and the stuff. Right. Obama's going to take her guns. I know what Clinton tried to do. And I'm like, fucking, I'll stop it.
I mean, the truth of the matter, those people were going to exist whether the NRA is there or not.
True,
and,
but the NRA
kinda,
again
fuels
the fire.
A place to kind of circle up. But
all right, well, I would go on this for hours, but I know you want to talk about your buddy. Dale Mossad.
Okay, if you don't remember who Dale Mossad is, Dale Mossad was the mayor of Port Richey, Florida. Okay, and if you remember, he was a former doctor, lost his medical license, was the mayor of Port Richey. They came after him because he was practicing medicine illegally in his home.
Because he had lost his
license. And when they came after him with a SWAT team. And when they did that, he shot at them.
Yeah.
Right? Now, you shoot at a SWAT team, I don't know what the stats are, but it seems like it's not good that you come out of that alive or without a bullet hole in you.
It's not likely that you're going to come out of that alive, right?
And yet he did, so
yes, he did.
Kudos to him on that. But the reason why...
But wait, there's more.
Right, the reason why it's back in the news is that so we've come to find out that not only was he practicing medicine illegally, not only did he shoot at the SWAT team, we find out that the reason why he may have shot at the SWAT team is because he was using crack and meth on a nightly basis, right? And sending one of his stooges out to go get him crack and meth every night.
And then sharing it.
Right.
He should.
And sharing it like, a good kindergartner. And doing things like trading testosterone and steroids for meth and crack.
This guy is a former mayor. That is so awesome.
Right, he's a former
And by the
mayor.
way, the picture on that...
Oh, God, it's terrifying.
It says this guy done a lot
Right,
of
it's
crack and
terrifying.
meth.
Like, dear Lord. So then, not only that, he also gets in trouble recently, last month in April, for conspiring to tamper with a witness with the, at the time, current mayor of Port Richey, who is now the former mayor of Port Richey, because he got, so essentially the guy who replaced him was conspiring with him to tamper with a witness in the case against Mossad. And so the replacement mayor has also been removed from office. So they lost... So they had two mayors removed from office in...
A 20-day stretch, I believe.
Days. 20 days.
I am announcing my candidacy for mayor of Port Richey.
I just like it.
And my platform is I will not use both meth and crack.
Period. And I think you win.
Maybe I just use one, but not both.
I mean, it is... I mean, listen, if you could run and just say, listen, I dabble in cocaine, I drink a lot, but I won't be operating on anybody in my home.
Won't be sewing anyone's leg up.
Right. I mean, it just the story is just wild. I sent it to you, and I'm just like, we can't not talk about this. I'm sorry.
You loved it the first time around, and now it just doubled down.
This dude is just, I don't know whether to commend him or just shake my head. And I think you just commend him while shaking your head like, wow,
the only thing that will make this better is if he goes to jail, comes out, and then runs again and wins.
Right.
If he can do that, that's...
that's beyond Jim Trafficant type stuff there.
Marion Barry would be going, damn, that's impressive.
Right. I mean,
good stuff. So Port Richey, Florida.
Right. Now I feel
creating jobs.
Right.
That's a great story.
Giving people opportunities.
Exactly. So one thing that really caught my eye this week was Nick DiPaulo, a 52, I think, year old comedian who has, had a successful comedic career, and I actually think he's a very good comic. Released a special on YouTube, so a free special, and it was called A Breath of Fresh Air. And in one of his promos for it, it pictures him flipping off a bunch of activists, women carrying signs, and a black person wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt. And I'm sorry, I don't have that name handy, but the Black Lives Matter activist depicted in this image was killed in gun violence. So so Nick DiPaulo was taking a lot of heat, and I think deservedly so. That was bad form on his part. Now, I did watch the comedy special, and it was kind of what you'd expect. Nick DiPaulo's gone hardcore right wing, and his whole thing is, the PC culture is terrible, and I'm going to stand up to all these activists and liberals and whatever, and pretty much every time he got into a joke didn't land in this special, he would do the old, fuck you, you politically correct. I don't know why he's got that accent now, but you bunch of politically correct libs, blah blah blah, and that kind of to me hurt the special because it became redundant and predictable. I've also seen Nick DiPaolo's follow-up where he said he didn't know who that person was and didn't know that they were dead, which I can accept that statement is factual. What I can't accept is his follow-up was, and by me doing this, I'm keeping his memory alive. Fuck you, Nick DiPaolo. Fuck you. You're not some noble being who's keeping a memory of an activist alive. You didn't do your homework, or your publicist didn't. You did something shitty. I would have given you credit if you had given anything resembling a sincere apology. Instead, you tried to play the victim. Boo-hoo, fuck off, Nick DiPaolo. There's my statement on that.
Wait, well, so how did he play the victim?
When people came at him for doing that, he's like, I didn't do it. Someone did that for me. Whoever put that there should have known better. And just,
okay.
It was, okay. In his retort to the heat he got for doing that. And
I mean,
again,
I don't know. I guess you kind of. I mean, in my opinion, you own it, right? I mean, I'm kind of big on that. Just own it. You did it. I mean, you're in comedy. You're trying to get attention. You're trying to get laughs. Right. That's what comedy is. This whole idea, I didn't know. Like, I kind of call bullshit. I don't buy it. I don't buy that he didn't know. I don't buy it was, I mean, I think there's a lot that goes into these specials. There's a number of people that are behind them, producing them, checking, things like that. So the idea that no one knew who the person was that they were posting, they said, really quick, just go get a picture of a Black Lives Matter person. Right. I mean, could it have happened? Maybe. I don't necessarily buy it. And I'm kind of neutral on it. I don't care. I don't really know who Nick DiPaolo is. I think I've seen him on like those I want to say Comedy Central roast. I think he's done. I don't know if maybe I don't know if him. And maybe I'm confusing him with someone else, but I mean he's kind of like a low level comic. I mean if he's got a special, then clearly he's got a following. He's out there. He's been doing it for 30 years, and he's my point. I don't. Okay. Yeah, okay. I think it's in poor taste. But it's comedy. I'm not going to beat a comic up for being a bad comic. I mean, it's just like, right, whatever. Well, the bigger picture thing is he's trying to do I'm saving free speech. I'm going to fight against the political correctness. And in a lot of ways, I agree with that mentality. Like, not in this particular case, but I do think that people are way too quick. Either you agree with it or you don't, right? What do you mean? Either you agree with it or you don't. I mean, you don't have to. I mean, I think this is. I don't like the way he's doing it. Let me put it that way. I don't think he's claiming to pursue a noble cause, and I think. Listen, if you support the idea of free speech, and comics having the leeway to be who and what they are, right? Then I think you could say he's not funny. I didn't find this funny. And just kind of leave it at that. I mean, that's me all the time, right? A joke is either funny or it's not, and that's it. Right. Now, and this special wasn't bad. It did amuse me a few times. It didn't have me like rolling over laughing, but it kept me entertained. So I guess mission accomplished, Nick DiPaolo, and fuck you. The apology part annoyed the shit out of me. Which is, I mean, and again, that's where I think if you do stuff like this, you own it, and you're probably going to get shit either way, but I think for a few people it's better if you own it, because there will be a few more people who say, well, you know what, at least he owns who and what he is. But as soon as you go down it's not my fault, you're blaming other people, and then you go to by me doing this I'm keeping his memory, okay, then see, you just basically turn off anyone you had that might have kind of at least been on the fence, right? Like you push them over to the other side, and that's just, I mean, that's the kind of the downside of just being a pussy, I guess. Okay, right? I don't know. I'm fine with that. All right, so I stand by my "fuck you, Nick DiPaolo" joke or comment, but we're trying to avoid Trump, as I said. But you didn't even need to bring him up, and I'll show you how you do this. Okay, show me how to do this. Switching gears. We're going to jump into something a little bit more serious, talking about criminal justice. And it's weird that these two things are even mentioned in the same light. But Kim Kardashian is doing some pretty good work in the world of criminal justice, and prison reform, and she is footing the bill, which is a pretty big bill, for a group of attorneys to go around and fight for people who have, low-level crime offenses, nonviolent drug offenses, with, excessively long sentences, 10, 15, 25, life sentences, these very excessively long sentences to, she's, financially supporting this group of attorneys to go around the country and fight for these people to get out of prison. And to date, they've had 17 people released through that effort.
In the last 90 days, they've had 17 people released.
Right. I mean, which is
very impressive.
Right. It's remarkable. And now the part of this is more can be done. It is, a lot of this has to do with money, right? The reason why a lot of these people are in the situation they're in, whether it's nonviolent drug offenders or people that may be, innocent that have been found guilty, that are, a lot of it comes down to money. They don't have the money to continue to fight the fight. Right. They don't have the money to, have a lawyer,
team of lawyers doing this
on their behalf to get them out. So for someone like her to put her money where her mouth is, saying like, listen, not only do I feel terrible that this is happening and I want it to change, this is what I'm going to do to actually change it. And while there's plenty of criticisms of Kim Kardashian, listen, I used to be a huge fan of hers. I thought she was very attractive. I think to a degree, she, you can see kind of who and what she was physically. But I mean, when I met her back in Chicago, this was many, many, many surgeries ago. Okay. Right. I mean, like she's just a different person now. Like in every sense of the word. Right. But I mean, physically, her face is just not the same, and it's not age because she technically hasn't aged because so much of her face is new. I think she clearly had butt implants, and she's had them for a long time, but it's gotten, noticeably out of control. One of my biggest issues, I hate fake butts. I hate them because most
fake butts. Sorry.
Every white guy in America. Okay. But I hate fake butts. Because usually the women who get fake butts, they don't have the muscular structure in the legs to match a butt that would be developed that way, right? Like, so if you've got a solid bubble butt, then chances are you probably worked for it. There's a few people who were genetically predisposed to it, but I mean, chances are you worked for it. So you're gonna have quads and hamstrings and calves and all this other stuff that go along with it, right? And you look at her in a swimsuit, and it's just like you've got this big round ass and these, toothpick legs that just do not match structurally. And if you know anything about physical development or anatomy, you're just like, oh, that's just a bad look. So, I mean, Kim Kardashian has fallen off my, top 10, 20, top 100 hot women list because of all the surgeries. And obviously the show that they have on E is ridiculous.
It's still?
Oh yeah, it's still on. It's still on. They've become. People always point to the Kardashians and they blame them for everything that's wrong with society. Right? You got an issue with society. You blame reality TV. You blame the Kardashians, and that's kind of the go-to for everybody, conservative or liberal, whatever. It's all the Kardashians' fault.
This is what you get when you got the Kardashians on TV.
Exactly, which to a degree it's ridiculous. I think they're more of a symptom of an overall problem than anything. But I totally get it. That being said, with all the criticisms you may have and the issues you may have with Kim Kardashian on this particular or her husband Kanye West, but this particular issue, she's really. I think that, to me, can make up for a lot of the sins.
Hell yes.
And then if more people actually got out and said, I don't need you out there protesting, and she's doing this quietly. Right. Now, to be fair, she's also going to turn it into a documentary. Right. And because the Kardashians do not miss an opportunity to make money, and I don't have a problem with it. Good for you.
I give them credit for their entrepreneurial success.
Right. I don't care if it was a sex tape. A lot of people out there, if you go make a sex tape, you won't make a fucking dime. So... you will. Yeah. You will. You'll make something. There's just too many people like me out there. But that being said, however, this effort to me means so much more. I don't fucking Alyssa Milano. She goes on Twitter. She's at every protest. You know what that's doing, Alyssa Milano? It's actually doing dick. You're not doing dick. Going, sitting in a congressional hearing, just sitting there with that tight face and your shitty tweets and Trump, I'm mad at Trump. All that doesn't do anything except adds more noise to the rhetoric. Adds more noise to the what's just the bullshit that's already out there.
Right.
And so for her to actually, Kim Kardashian, to go out there and say, listen, I'm going to take action. Right. And she's not a lawyer. Now there was some.
She's actually going to law school, or that was
well,
rumored?
There was something where she was going to try to skip law school and just take the California bar. Which, good luck.
Is that one of those states that you can pass the bar and become a lawyer?
No.
No, okay. Because some states you can do that, right?
Some states you can.
All you got to do is pass the bar.
So, yeah, some states. Well, maybe California is, but all I know is that California has one of the hardest bars in the country. I'm pretty sure Kim Kardashian hasn't been to school in a while. I'm sure she's a bright enough girl to do plenty of things, but to think that you're gonna
step in, take the bar, and
you're gonna fund this, and then you're gonna walk in and take the bar. If she can. God bless her.
Right, but you know what? Maybe getting some legal understanding is going to make her a better activist. And like you said, they're going to make a documentary out of this. But
and again, that's people will point to it and just be like, oh, it's just a money making thing. Look, listen, the people who are free, who are no longer in prison because of it, they don't give a damn about that documentary.
And it's important to know that in California, they had a 3 strikes law where you got 3 felonies, you were doing a minimum sentence that was usually excessive. I think some cases it was life.
Yeah.
And even though those were 3 nonviolent drug offenses, and people can say, well, if you just don't do drugs, you won't have that problem. Okay, fine,
got it.
You're right. But some of those people are in prison for something that is now recreationally legal in California.
And and there have been enough people who said it that are way smarter than me, that have done way more research than me, that said for the longest time, this shouldn't be addressed as a criminal justice problem. This is a health problem, right? And we've seen it time and time again. And even our own state here in Ohio, they have looked at it and said, all right, this is a health crisis, right?
Well, we're talking opioids now, and yes, that is clearly
okay,
a
but
health
fine.
crisis,
but they're still looking at it as a health crisis, right?
Right.
So a lot of these issues, or a lot of these people who are in prison right now, probably needed some form of combination of mental help. They needed help with their drug addiction. They needed, social, all sorts of various things. What they didn't need was to be thrown in prison for a decade or more.
Right.
It's 17 people, and with the number of people we have in prison, that is a tiny drop in the bucket, but it's still better.
Someone doing something.
Right.
And it's setting precedent, I would hope. I would hope they would say, well, this person did the exact same thing. You saw that. I would think it would empower other lawyers in California and maybe other states to use that same style of argument.
Or you take this, you get more celebrities of the same ilk and the same, that have that same level of money, and they just put it into her group, right? I guess you can, if you want, if you just have to have your own credit, your own foundation or group or whatever, then fine. But you can just say, listen, I want to help. Here's $200,000. Here's $100,000. Here's $25,000. Right, and then so you can hire more attorneys, and you have more money for travel, and you have more money for motions and everything else,
document requests,
right,
and other things.
All those things are possible, and I think it's just a good move, and it would be nice to see. And it doesn't just have to be with criminal justice reform, right? There's so many other issues out there. We had the Flint water crisis, right? We saw all these billionaires dump all this money into Notre Dame Cathedral, which burned down, and who knows what's going to happen there in terms of how they rebuild that and what they do with the money. But man, if you're willing to do that for a church, then you don't mean to tell me that there's not enough billionaires out there who can come up with $500 million to resolve the issue that's happening in Flint and so many other places, in inner cities who have, old shitty pipes with lead, right? And because if you can resolve that, if you can get some of the lead out of the water and get rid of some of the lead paint in some of these buildings, maybe you deal with some of the issues that some of these kids are having where they can't manage their anger and they can't be in schools and all that. There's a lot of things that can be done here. So there's a blueprint, right? And just because it's from Kim Kardashian doesn't mean it's bad. someone take notice.
Sure,
A hell of a lot more money than us.
No, I give her tons of credit. I mean, I'm not a fan of their show or, their products. I don't even know what their products are, to be honest with you. But whenever someone with that kind of ability,
Jim, you have a closet full of
Kim Kardashian makeup, is it?
I'm saying I'm sure they got everything.
All right.
I mean, I'm sure they got their little hands and everything.
All right, I want to talk about Seth Meyers and Meghan McCain.
Yeah.
Because did you see the interview between the two of them?
No, I think Seth Meyers is awful. So.
Okay, so
but apparently so does Meghan McCain's husband.
Yeah, apparently so does Meghan McCain's husband. So a couple things I want to talk about here, though. Meghan McCain appears on Seth Meyers' show.
Tell people who she is.
Who Meghan McCain is?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean the daughter, the co-host of The View, daughter of.
Okay, why don't we start with the daughter of John McCain?
Daughter of the late Senator John McCain. And she's a public figure. I mean, she's pretty well known, and she's very politically conservative. Although one thing I liked about her is she was one of the few conservatives who said, "Hey, Republicans, if you don't stop with this abstinence-only attitude towards sex, you're gonna start losing young people in droves. And by the way, you're all hypocrites for saying that, so quit saying it." So anyway, I actually do kind of like Meghan McCain. She goes on Seth Meyers' show, and he came at her about comments made by Ilhan Omar and her comments about Ilhan Omar, the representative from Minnesota, with regards to Israel. And it got a little bit touchy. I mean, at one point, he's defending Ilhan Omar for saying, the tweets you attacked her for on The View, she apologized for, and Meghan McCain says to Seth Meyers, "Are you her publicist?" or something like that. And he said, "No, I'm trying to find common ground." And it ended with them both saying, "Yeah, well, it's good to see you, whatever." All the headlines were, things get heated between Seth Meyers and Meghan McCain, and then Meghan McCain's husband sent out a bunch of tweets, and one of his tweets was, basically saying Seth Meyers is a hack, he's got no talent, the only reason he is where he is he spent years gargling Lorne Michaels' balls, and then that got put out there as homophobic, which, I'm sorry, it's not. It's a commonly used expression. In fact, funny thing, our studio is being borrowed on occasion by two friends of mine who are both gay men, and one of them said Meghan McCain's husband went off on a homophobic tweet. And he was here yesterday, we were talking, and I specifically said to him, I'm like, I asked Joey, you said this was homophobic. To me, this is the exact same thing as when Stephen Colbert said that Putin uses Trump's mouth as his cock holster. I mean, it is exactly the same thing. No one called Stephen Colbert homophobic, and they shouldn't have. And Joey said...
Conservatives did Breitbart with all
okay.
They lost their minds.
Okay, well, they lost their minds. I don't know if they used homophobic or not, but...
They did.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, they were wrong, too. And I brought this up to Joey, and I said, I don't think this is homophobic. And he admitted, I got lured in by a headline. I read a headline, and I repeated it, and he agreed that this is... it's not a classy thing to say, but it's not...
I mean, God forbid we ban you guys from being able to use phrases describing men's gargling other men's balls. Like, what are you going to do?
It's not homophobic.
Listen, I agree with you. I think, again, hypersensitivity, right? I mean, It's just, I don't like you, and so, I don't like you. I don't like your politics. So any little thing you do, I'm going to attack it and make it way worse than what it actually is.
And if you can label someone as racist, homophobic, xenophobic, whatever,
right?
That's
and everybody's doing it. If so, and I don't know how you combat it. I mean, I think you do call people. I think that's a good job by you to call your friend on it and just say, is it really? I mean, because we have these phrases that we use, and it's just, that's insensitive to this group and it's insensitive to that group,
right?
And Democrats and the progressive left are really big on sectioning people out, right? Like, it's your LGBTQ IRS plus, which is different than, because then you have your, black and Latino LGBTQ2, and you have these different groups, and you have, black people, and then you have, black people who are, a part of the African descendant of slaves group who don't like these black people, and then you've got all these different factions, right? These different groups that are so focused on their individual issues, right? And that's just they're laser focused on those issues, and then once if you say anything about their particular group in any way, shape, or form that they don't like, they go after you, claws out, knives out, guns a-blazing, and it's just this constant, fight over how we say things and words and being offended and being ists, sexist, racist, homophobic, all this other shit. And I think we're getting so lost. People are getting so lost in the minutia of being offended that even bigger things are happening over their head, and they're just like, by the time they realize that, they're going to look up and they're going to be getting hit in the face with a mallet.
To me, it's when you cry wolf on something like this, then you hurt the bigger cause. And I have no. I
guess the question is, what is the bigger cause? Right.
Well, there is legit homophobia out there,
right, that
exists.
Okay.
And when you try to make this into that, you diminish the real claims, in my opinion. You numb people to, well, they're calling everything homophobic now. When Colbert said it, none of the liberals, and I didn't. Yes, Colbert said exactly the same thing, and I did not know who Meghan McCain's husband was until this happened. I looked the guy up, and he's like is the CEO of some conservative magazine, and I'm guaranteeing you, if he and I were having a beer together, we wouldn't find a lot of common ground. So I don't want to sound like I'm defending the guy, but I do have a huge problem with these tabloid type headlines that are just there to grab attention, and people just reading a headline and then running with it.
So ultimately, there's your bigger issue, your broader issue, I guess. Whether you're saying this or not, I'm just telling you what it is with the media, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. And so it's the media taking these things and doing it completely intentional, right? It's 100% intentional.
Yes.
Right? And I think there are some in the media who passionately feel this way, right? That are hyper offended anytime that they hear anything that remotely gives them the vibe of ism. Right? Racism, sexism, homophobism, all that shit, right? So there are some people in the media who will see it and immediately get cockeyed, lose their mind, and write a ridiculous article about how this is the worst travesty that's ever happened in mankind. But I think there are other people who look at it and say, well, no matter, write it up this way because you know what's going to happen. Click, click, click,
you'll get your clicks.
Right, and so I think you're dealing with kind of two, different monsters within the world of media that is problematic, right? Because you have your true believers, right, who are true believers to a fault, right, who put their emotions and their personal feelings and opinions into these articles that are supposed to be objective that are clearly not. Right? It's very hard to find an objective article at this point anywhere.
And this, no
matter what. Yeah. It's really hard to find something that's just written without complete political narrative spin, bias, whatever you might say. It's being, I think in some cases it's the individual author, that's just how they are, and their editors are allowing it because they know it will get attention from both sides, for and against, but it's going to get attention, right? And then you have other editors who are saying, that's too neutral, you need to spice this up.
Yeah. And, if we keep eating it up, and if we don't hold people accountable and institutions accountable for, baiting us into, negative conversations, then they're going to keep doing it because it makes them money. Right. So I don't know. I'm not calling for a protest of anyone. I don't know who I'd call for a protest of.
Can I agree that Seth Meyers is terrible?
I have.
He's not funny. He's not a good interviewer.
I can't say that because the only thing I've ever seen him do as a night talk show host is the 11 minutes I saw with Meghan McCain. I have not watched 1 minute of Seth Meyers, so I can't say that based on lack of knowledge.
And it's just it's one of, how did he even get a late night? Because he was on Saturday Night Live for a little bit,
right?
And it's like I don't understand how some of these people get to Saturday Night Live, right? Which is part of the reason why I stopped watching it, because it's just like
I liked him when he did Weekend Update, but I like everyone who does Weekend Update. I love.
So you're clearly not the person to ask,
Correct?
Right?
Right.
I mean, I don't know.
I love that segment from Saturday Night Live, and I can't think of a single host I didn't like.
Right.
I love Dennis Miller. I love Kevin Nealon.
I think Kevin Nealon may be the last one
that you could tolerate. You don't like the current guys? Colin Jost and Michael Che?
I can't tell you the last time I've seen Saturday Night Live.
Okay.
Can't tell you.
I watch Weekend Update damn near every week.
I haven't watched it. God, I mean, it's maybe been 10 years or longer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just stopped being funny to me.
Okay.
Right? I mean, and I just never really got back to it.
I usually record it, and I usually watch Weekend Update, the opening thing, and then
the last time I saw it, was it Late Night at the Apollo used to come on after it? I don't know. Does it still?
I record it, so I don't know, but I don't think so.
I doubt it.
All right. So anyway, yes, my big issue was with the media, and also with the fact that it wasn't. I mean, late night shows are typically softball interviews, right? It's not, a Democrat going on Fox News or conservative going on MSNBC. You do expect it to be a bit of a softball. So I understand why people said this was maybe inappropriate, but for fuck's sake, they disagreed a little bit. They talked a bit. No one stormed off. No one. He didn't do a Ben Shapiro and run away from the camera, which I would love to talk about. You want to talk about that? It's not on the board.
What happened with Ben?
Ben Shapiro was on BBC being interviewed by a guy who I'm drawing a blank.
Andrew Neil.
Thank you. And this guy basically said...
So I gave it away. Obviously, I know what the fuck happened.
I know you did. But he was getting interviewed by the guy, by Andrew Neil, and the guy was challenging him, saying, the Republican Party or the conservatives don't bring ideas to the table. And basically, long story short, they went back and forth. They called each other's names. Both claimed to not know who the other one was prior to the interview. And eventually, Ben Shapiro stormed off like a pussy.
Well, it's not that. I mean, it's Ben Shapiro says, he basically storms off and says, "Screw you, I'm famous. Nobody knows who you are." Right? I mean, and then walks off, and it's just like, well, you're on the BBC network, and you're talking to a person who's widely known to anyone who watches the BBC regularly. And so, I don't know. It was just a...
I'm sorry.
I mean,
it was
because you asked me if I'd say you asked me about if I had seen the headline, and I'm like,
speaking of headlines that grab attention,
right?
The headline was Ben Shapiro runs from BBC, which has multiple meanings.
Right. Well, BBC really has two meanings, right? The
British Broadcasting Company,
right? The British Broadcasting Company and Big Black Cock. Right, if you watch any level of porn, chances are you know that BBC stands for Big Black Cocks. So immediately you go to Ben Shapiro running down the street while fucking Terry Crews
is chasing him with his
dick out, which is just an awful thought. And then you're like, Ben Shapiro
actually,
doesn't
it's fucking hilarious.
Look that athletic. So I feel like that chase wouldn't last long. And wow, poor Ben Shapiro's ass.
The beauty. All right, I'm going to call you out because I told you about that. You went, "You're disgusting." And then you thought about it for 30 seconds. You started to laugh. And then you tried to get it together again, and you started laughing more.
I am not above a crude, ridiculous image.
I'm well aware.
Right? I mean, it's just my initial thought of Ben Shapiro in listen, you haven't seen some of the things that I've seen, right? You haven't done some of the things that I've done, Jim. So
that's probably true.
Let's just
leave it at that. Let's do that. I just thought that was so damn funny, though. Ben Shapiro runs from BBC. And it was all in one line with nothing else.
See, you initially said Terry Crews, and I just pictured myself running after Ben Shapiro with my dick out. So, that's why I'm like, this is bad.
If I had pictured that would be fucked up. If I pictured you whipping your dick out and chasing Ben Shapiro down the street, that would be fucked up.
Come here, Ben. Come here, Ben. Get over here.
All right.
Finish him. On him.
All right, we can't go straight to what we were going to talk about next because that's just too bad of a transition. So say on this. Let's.
So we got two options: North Korea or Russia.
No, we're doing Baltimore. We're doing Baltimore because a woman in Baltimore, a reporter in Baltimore named Mary Bubala, was interviewing a college professor on Baltimore TV, and she said Essentially.
WBNG.
No, actually, I was wrong about that. That was a Binghamton station. It was actually WJZ. I thought it was WBNG.
Okay.
Which
either W Bang or Jay-Z's station in Baltimore.
There's that, but saying bang in Baltimore usually means something different. Little gun violence joke.
Thanks.
Yeah,
thanks, Joe.
Clarify when you got to explain the joke, it didn't land. But so she said, the last three mayors of Baltimore have all been African American women. They've all been passionate public servants. Two of them have had to resign under scandal. Do we need a different type of leadership? And that got her fired. And
so, one, I guess my initial question is, do we know the response to the question, and then do we know the immediate response to the question? Then do we know the public's response to her question of change in leadership? Then do we know the public's response to the firing?
And all I've seen is people coming out saying she should not have been fired. Now, okay. I'm always the first one to say, when someone gets fired for something that they said...
sorry.
When someone gets fired for something that they said, in this case it was in the course of performing their duties, but even when it's not, especially when it's not, usually they wanted to fire you and they were looking for an excuse. I don't know this woman's story. I know she had been... in Baltimore with the station for like 15 years. So, whether or not she was...
And over the course of 15 years, can you build up bad blood where they're looking for any reason to fire you?
Possibly.
Absolutely.
But in terms of just on the surface, to fire someone for asking that question, and I'll acknowledge, it's a poorly phrased question.
It's not, though. I mean, listen, having spent time, it's a legitimate question.
Okay.
Right? I
think it's poorly phrased in the sense that I don't think she meant to say, do we need different gender or different race of people? We need people who aren't going to resign their scandal.
I think, wasn't the quote, do we need a different form of leadership?
Yeah.
Okay. That's the question, right? And the answer is clearly yes. You need someone who's not going to try to...
corrupt.
You need someone who's not going to try to sell shitty kids' books, right? Like that they wrote to a school that they sit on the board of, right? You need someone else who's going to not try to sweep the fact that, violence is so bad in their city that it's literally a national emergency or a state of emergency. So I think there's plenty of... To ask, do we need a different form of leadership? The answer is yes, we do. We need someone who's not corrupt. We need someone who's going to be accountable. We need someone who is going to make decisions that have some form of positive impact on the city. When is the last time a mayor in Baltimore has done anything worth a damn in the city of Baltimore? Right? I mean, so to phrase it like it's racist, I think that's in direct contrast to what Carolyn Meadows said earlier in the show from the NRA. Well, they just voted her in because she's a black woman, right? I think it's in direct contrast because this person is asking the question: do we need a different type of leadership? Right now, the lead-in was we've had 3 black women and they've all basically gone down in flames, right? Like so, I get where you're coming from to a degree, but at the same time, you do need a different type of leadership.
Absolutely. I guess what I was trying to get across is that I don't think the question was intended to make gender or race the focus of it. It's, hey, 2 of our last 3 mayors have essentially, been run out of office due to scandals. We got to fix this, right? That's how I would ask the question.
Yeah. I mean, I think the mistake, you're right. So I went off on a tangent there and I made a mistake. You're right. She could have phrased the question better by leaving out the race and the gender of the women.
Right.
But I think I don't know if you can ignore it because I think there are people out there who are looking at that and saying, well, we gave them a shot and this is what they did. Right. So the question is, how do we reconcile it? Right. So are we going to now label every black female that runs for mayor in a major city that's got a Democratic base? Are we all going to scrutinize them and hold them to, and compare them to, the failed...
Stigmatize them to being you're the same, from the same...
You're cut from the same cloth of, these 2 women that did not work out at all. Right. And on the one hand, you say, nope, not right, not fair. Each person should be judged on their own merit and based on what their potential is to do in that position. That's the right answer.
Correct.
But people are human, and that's not how they operate.
And to fumble over the question and lose your job over it, again, I would bet big amounts of money that there's way more to the story in that station's politics. But this, in and of itself, in my opinion, is ridiculous to fire somebody.
So I'm assuming the reporter was white.
Yes.
Okay. So, I don't know. Maybe she was a horrible person to work with.
Maybe.
Right? And they just needed a reason to get rid of her, and they said, this will do.
Yep. And I would put money on that.
Right?
And who knows? Maybe she's a fantastic person to work for.
Or maybe she's been there for 15 years.
And their management is just, trying to get someone cheaper, get someone younger.
Someone prettier,
and they can't say we want a younger, prettier person, so
right. And all those things are real in news media, right?
Right.
Those things are all real. So I don't even know how you track it, but I think who knows if it's. I don't even know if it's unfortunate or not if it happened, right?
Right.
Because if she was a shitty person,
maybe she was a shitty person or a shitty reporter. I don't know, but
no idea.
This was not, in my opinion, a fireable offense. And if you start holding other people to that level of scrutiny in terms of how they phrase their questions, there's going to be. Other than mayor of Port Richey, I am now willing to be the anchor of WJZ in Baltimore.
I don't know.
Moving on.
I still want to be the mayor of Port Richey because I feel like you can really get away with a lot and still be okay.
You can shoot at a SWAT team.
Well, I think you can go right up to the line of shooting at the SWAT team. I think if you can avoid the SWAT team coming, you're good.
That's my new platform. I'm Jim Lalka, and I will not shoot at the SWAT team. Jim for mayor of Port Richey. All right. So the reason I didn't want to transition from Seth Meyers is because the next thing I want to talk about is Sandra Bland. And we've talked about Sandra Bland a lot. If you don't remember, she was in Prairie View, Texas. She just moved down there to take a job. Gets pulled over under the auspice of failing to signal. The cop that pulled her over gets very upset with her when she acts in a way that he considers to be disrespectful. And she lights a cigarette. He tells her to put it out, and she said, "No, I'm in my car. I know my rights." And he loses his mind, threatens to tase her, drags her out of the car, throws her to the ground, bangs her head. She ends up going to jail, and 3 days later, she's dead from what has been ruled by the medical examiner in Prairie View, Texas, as a suicide, where she allegedly hung herself with a trash bag.
Still makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and that's fair, Steve. Of all the police, abuse of power stories we've discussed, this one I think makes me the most angry because this was a fucking traffic stop that this guy's ego got bent out of shape. It became a physical altercation and ultimately resulted in her death. HBO did a documentary about it. We've talked about it a bunch, but one key thing came out this week, and that was she was actually recording the confrontation with the officer on her cell phone. And a lot of his claims were that, he didn't know if she was armed, he didn't know what was in her hand, whatever. And we now know that's clearly bullshit. Now, the officer was fired. He was charged with falsifying a police report and I think pled guilty. But this is one of the most infuriating examples of police misconduct that we've ever talked about. I don't know if of the ones we've talked about, Walter Scott getting shot in the back while running away ranks way up there. Laquan McDonald getting shot at 16 times and hit 8 times while walking away from a line of police officers where he was no threat. That ranks real high up there.
Tamir Weiss was a child with a toy.
True. True, but the officer didn't know that at the time, and that was a horribly handled situation. But
You want to talk about escalation?
Well,
driving your car 70 miles an hour and skidding on mud and then jumping out and shooting again.
Horrible.
Listen, this really infuriates you. I get it. I think listen, we're ranking horrible events.
Right.
So I feel bad.
They should all be a tie, probably.
Right. I feel like they should all be one just tied across the board.
Right.
This doesn't hit me the way that it hits you. It's awful because this police officer, there's no reason a person should go just being a rational human being.
Right.
There's no reason a person should be going to jail for a turn signal violation, right?
And lighting a cigarette.
Okay, right. I mean, listen, and I could pull up YouTube videos of white people being just disgusting to police officers.
Sure.
Right? I mean, going to do you know who I am? I'm going to call my husband, or
you work for me.
I work for all this other stuff. I mean, white people spitting on police officers. And it's because, listen, police aren't a monolith, right? I mean, like each person is different. Each department is different. They may have similar characteristics, and you know, they all kind of are cut from similar cloth, but each individual is different. So you know, you can't go to in this particular instance, I saw this person do this to a police officer and they didn't react, right? I mean, Sandra Bland unfortunately was pulled over by the wrong guy, right? And it seems like he was itching for a reason, one, to pull somebody over. Clearly, he had an issue with her. Well, I won't say clearly, but this guy had some issues.
Yeah.
And my issue with this, though, is his whole defense was, you know, the reason why I threatened her with the taser is because I felt I was in danger, and you know, and we're recording it, and he's like, I don't know what's in her hands. Like, you don't know what a cell phone is, bro? Like, I mean, because if you don't know what a cell phone is, and it's not like he was 10 feet away. Right. I mean, she was sitting in her car, and he was less than 2 feet away, and you can clearly see from her video that she is recording him, right? So if he can't tell that she's recording him with a cell phone, right, then he probably shouldn't be in the job that he's in. Right, like, so his whole claim...
Probably shouldn't be driving an ice cream truck if you can't do that.
I mean, if his whole claim was, I felt my life was in danger, she could have grabbed something else and whatever. I mean, that is so ridiculous. You know, I mean, again, de-escalate the situation, give her a ticket, give her 2 tickets, right? Because I watched a video just the other day of a police officer gave a guy a ticket for speeding, and the guy ripped the ticket up and threw the pieces at the officer. And the officer was like, okay. So he goes back to his car and he writes him 2 tickets, right? And the guy is just screaming and whatever. And the officer says, okay, well, have a nice day, but make sure you pay those tickets, and drives off. Why couldn't this guy have done that to Sandra Bland? He does that. Chances are she's still here today.
100%.
Right? I mean, it's just like the whole thing where it's
and
just
that's why it infuriates me.
You disrespect me as a police officer. I am the end all be all. Right? I mean, and we've heard it countless times before from Mike Wood that, you know, something is, you know, innocuous as a fucking traffic stop can end in death. There's a basic example of that. Now, the whole thing where she hung herself with a trash bag I guess it's possible. It doesn't seem to make sense to me why there was a giant drum. Right? I mean, because think about how big that trash bag would have to be. I mean, I don't think Sandra Bland was a huge person. Right, but I mean, from the video, she looked like she was maybe 5'6" and probably went about 140 pounds ish. You know, give or take 10 or 15. So, you mean to tell me she had access to a trash bag big enough to wrap around her neck and hang from something?
I don't know that she. I don't know the details.
However, it just doesn't like. I don't know how do you? Okay. Maybe. Who knows?
Right.
I mean,
I'm not comfortable going there because I don't know, but I understand your suspicion.
Either. It just, to me, like, I just have so many questions out of it. Now, maybe someone's like, oh, yeah, people hang themselves with trash bags all the time in prisons or jails. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me. And so I just have more questions about how she actually died. You know, I mean, his actions are the reason why she ended up in that position.
Right.
And even if she did kill herself, like...
The system's at the table. You should not spend 3 days in jail for a traffic stop.
You shouldn't spend a minute in jail.
Or a minute, yes.
I mean, like, if it's a DUI or, you know, something, you know, violent...
Reckless endangerment where going 150 miles an hour.
Right, but it wasn't even for speeding. It was just for not...
And he was writing her a warning. So I think he was in this, I'm going to be the hero guy who could have given you a ticket, but I didn't. And then when she was like, dude, no, you're not that guy, and I'm lighting a cigarette. And he escalated the situation so dramatically. We've seen this all on video. That part, there's no speculation, right?
Right. I mean, in this, and I'm going to say this. You shouldn't, I just don't think it's right that these cops feel the need to give people, like, you know what? because you're not nice to me, or because you're a bitch, or because you're an asshole, I'm going to give you a ticket on top of whatever your actual infraction is, right? Like, I get that they can, but man, something about that just doesn't smell right.
I'm with you.
Now, and I get that they can, and I understand that, like, how it unfolds, right? But at the same time, like, damn it, it just doesn't, like, it just has such a bad feeling to it of, your infraction is this, but since I don't like the way you are, right, I don't like the way you said certain things, whatever, I'm going to give you an additional ticket on top of it, right? Or now, instead of doing X, I'm going to do Y because you're a dick. Right? You can be a complete psychopath, but as long as you can keep your mouth shut, you're fine. Right? You can be a perfectly normal person that just doesn't like being pulled over by police and respond the wrong way, say the wrong thing, or have too much of an attitude, or just like smoking cigarettes too much, and you end up in jail and you die.
Right.
Doesn't seem right.
Yeah, I agree. And, I will make an effort over the next week to look up and see if there was ever like a proper investigation done into the cause of death. I've seen the video. I've seen the documentary. In the documentary, her family basically 100% agrees with you that they're not buying the official narrative. Now, I don't know if there's been an independent investigation or not.
Right, and I don't know enough about it. I mean, from my vantage point, it
doesn't pass the sniff test, right?
It just doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
And I would love it if someone could. But I mean, it's hard to try. I mean, like, listen, you and I both know, shit in Texas it's just different down there. Well, I don't know. Is it?
Is it?
Right? I mean, but like, there's been plenty of horror stories that come out of Texas and those small towns and how they treat people, once they get them off the street into their jail. I mean, they treat these jails like they're, long-term prisons. So, it is a really sad story. But I mean, every one of these stories where you could talk about someone dying at the hands of police for one reason or another, they're all fucking tragic, right? Even in the instances where the people deserve it, right? It's just like, how the fuck do you end up in this position where you're pointing a gun at a police officer?
Or being a mayor of Port Richey, Florida, and shooting a SWAT team. Dude. I'm going to come back to that every time we get a chance.
I don't know. I mean, he may be our new... him and Murder Birds may be our official fucking mascot of this show.
I hope his defense is, did you hear how much I was smoking meth?
I got a drug problem.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if I'm his attorney, I'm like, listen, you need rehab. You need rehab. You need rehab. Right? Your problem is that you need rehab. Right?
Among other things. All right. So you sent me an article about kids running colleges.
Yeah, I did, and I read it. Now I read it, and I sent I put a tweet out, talking, just kind of referencing, saying I agree with it, right? And
sure.
The short of it is, the author was pointing out the fact that, listen, it's great these kids find have this passion regarding activism and social justice, but the institutions cannot let the students run the institutions, right? Like, they have to take these colleges back. He gave a litany of examples of, students, trying to get professors fired and making demands and all these sort of things. And the biggest issues that you see is that, all these different examples where the schools caved, right? And they said, okay, we'll get rid of this professor, or we will, we'll give you these centers. And there was one example where the students demanded certain services for LGBT and black students, and specifically black female students, and the university caved. But the students decided that they wanted more than what was provided, so they basically held the administration hostage again, right? I mean, and so the biggest issue that these schools are having is that they're caving to these kids. And listen, these are literally kids. These are people who were just in high school, right? These are people who just went to fucking prom, right? So now we're letting them to decide, administrative, duties, responsibilities, and all this, like, who actually works at the school, because social justice and their desire for, and it's It's absurd. I mean, I went to a school on the East Coast. I mean, I was surrounded. I mean, I went to the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. I was surrounded by Smith College, Amherst College, Mount Holyoke, a number of very liberal schools. And so I kind of saw the early sort of manifestation of this. Now, at the time, and I think UMass has a pretty good hold on this, and those schools in that region kind of do. But there's plenty of these schools are from that Northeast area, to where they're just completely losing control of the situation. And it's really unacceptable. And I think all it does is going to hurt these kids in the long run, because eventually that fire, that passion for activism is going to burn out when they need money. And all that's going to happen is that they're going to be bitter that they don't have money. So they're going to go on social media and bitch about activism while they go to work their shitty jobs because they didn't do anything worthwhile in college other than go to protest and try to get people fired. Right? I mean, there was one example where the students were actually demanding, and I think it was maybe at like Princeton, like an Ivy League school, where the students wanted less schoolwork because they were expending so much energy being activists that they were really tired. Right? I mean, right. This was like a battle between the administration. I'm like, how the fuck is the answer not go fuck yourself all the way back to wherever the fuck you came from? Right? Like, how is that not the response? Like, I would actually write that in a letter on letterhead of the university. Go fuck yourself all the way fuck wherever the hell you came from. Like, you're kicked out of the university just for requesting that.
And then there'd be protests, fire Steve.
Right. And it's just like, I'm the fucking president of this bitch. Get the fuck out.
Look, I think...
Pull Donald Trump.
I think a lot of the problem stems from that colleges are becoming...
And kids are pussies.
Well, colleges are becoming safe spaces, and kids are paying a lot of money, and they're borrowing a shit ton of money to get there.
They're paying a lot of money to basically go fucking sit at a shitty version of Starbucks, right? I mean, it's basically turning into not even Starbucks, right? Because these kids won't go to Starbucks because industrial capitalistic complex, right? So it's got to be some fucking coffee shop that you never heard of.
Caribou coffee.
Right, not even Caribou doesn't even exist anymore, except for maybe in Minnesota.
I think there's a few.
Only in Minnesota. There's none in the state of Ohio.
I know that.
Only because their head of HR is a good friend who doesn't work for them anymore.
Okay.
She now works for a grocery store chain down in Florida. But, these kids, they and I'm calling them kids, right? Which dates me, right? I'm 38. I guess I just have to accept it is what it is. But, I mean, these kids just with their overall attitude and their view on life are so misguided, right? Well, because like you need, like, listen, college is an opportunity to develop skills. I think there's a balance, right? Like having those different life experiences where you meet different people, you experience people of different cultures, you maybe find something that you're really passionate about that you get involved with, but you go to class and listen, there's value to going to class and learning certain things like from a fucking textbook. Right? Like there's certain things that, and the reason why we put shit in books is because we hold on to them, we value them, and they're things that are worth knowing so that we can duplicate efforts and we can continue efforts and we can expand certain things, and that in and of itself is a wonderful thing, right? And the way the world is going now, it doesn't mean that you have to go work at a bank or a corporation. You learn these skills, you learn these various just basic principles of economics and what used to be politics or whether it's science or whatever it might be, and then you can go out and you can start your own business, right? You go and you get that information, you use it, and then you go off and do your own thing, and you yourself have kind of done that, right? Like you've worked for the big companies, and now you're just like, listen, I'm a consultant, I do my own thing, and I play by my own rules.
I tried to start a business to do something that didn't pan out, and then I went back to consulting. But yeah, I work for me because I can.
Right. I mean,
I paid my dues.
Right. I mean, but you it started with getting a base level of education to be able to do that. Like you couldn't have walked out of high school, protested everything and been mad at everybody and tried to get all your professors fired and then turn around and do what you've done.
The difference is I'm a chemical engineer. So if I would have said to one of my engineering professors, hey, can you tone it down on the thermodynamics because I want to go protest.
You should have got kicked in the fucking face.
Honestly, they would look at me and said,
Get out
of my fucking office right now.
I mean,
you fucking moron.
Right. And that's how it should be.
Right.
Right. Now, if you want to go protest, you go do that shit on your own time.
Sure.
Right? Like, I mean, you do all, like, you don't have to go play a sport. Right? I mean, you don't have to play a sport. You don't have to do intramurals.
Don't have to go to BW3 at 3 in the afternoon on a Friday and get hammered for $1.25 for 20 ounce bud.
If you want to spend your time not in the classroom, not like if you want to spend your extra time outside of the classroom and studying to be an activist, then go do it.
Good for you.
Right? But good for you. But don't cut yourself short, because what a lot of these kids are doing are actually, they're really hurting themselves, right? Because they're not putting in, and I know this, I've met this person over and over again with just, different hair, different clothes, different eyes, different skin. It's the same. They're really, really passionate about social justice issues. And part of it, I think, in some cases, it's a cover because they're shitty students, right? Okay. And it's much easier to be an activist, right? And read a couple headlines, go on Twitter, especially nowadays, read some articles, and then say, I'm really passionate about this, and I'm going to fight for it. And then if you're going to make me go to class and take tests and all that other shit, then you're just a man trying to hold me down. That is literally just a cover for the fact that they are shitty students and they can't focus and they can't actually do what they're supposed to do. Right? I mean, like, let's just call it what it is. Some of them are actually really, really passionate. But the ones who are really passionate about it, right, understand the balance between the two. They are activists, but they go and they use the school to their advantage. They say, listen, I'm going to study this, and this, because that then gives me the ability to go out and fight the thing that is pissing me off the most, where I feel the need to go out and get some cardboard and write on it and then fucking hold a sign up in the fucking cold.
So you're putting a lot of this on the students.
All of it. Okay. And their parents. Because their parents are terrible for raising shitty children.
Okay, but I'm putting some of it on the schools too. Because the schools have become such money
I'm blaming
makers.
Everybody. I'm blaming everybody.
Okay, I'm all for that, because
I'm blaming me and you for not going down to Oberlin College right now and just start smashing heads.
Fucking kids' head together. Hey, kid, come here, let's talk about this. Thunk. All right, on that note, you want to do a little bit of sports talk and then get out of here? You want to skip the sports talk for now?
No, I don't, because here's the thing. It's the NBA playoffs, and we live in Cleveland.
Correct.
We're into, this is round 2 of the playoffs, right?
Correct.
And we're not involved. So we're kind of sitting back for the first time in a long, like in...
Let me interrupt you. Is it almost a little bit refreshing to you?
No.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It is kind of for me.
I like winning.
Oh, me too.
I like being in the mix, right? I mean, and that's the weird thing about Cleveland, is that you have so many people out there who wanted to see LeBron leave because they didn't like the drama, right? I mean, there are people out there who didn't really celebrate the championship that the Cavs won because they were still pissed about the way that LeBron left.
Right.
They don't like LeBron. And, when you have LeBron on your team, he does all sorts of little things. He sends tweets. He is seen in these places where he knows that the media is going to go crazy. He says, subliminal things in the media.
He's a bit of an activist, and he does political stuff.
All of that. So people are just like, I'm tired of LeBron's drama. I'd rather be a really shitty team with no drama, and instead of a really good team with LeBron's drama, which I think is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Okay. That's not what I was trying to say. Here's why it's a bit of a relief for me, because I expected LeBron to leave. I accepted it. This time I held no bitterness towards him for it.
I was okay, mostly because we won a title.
Which was one of the most fun nights I've had watching sports in my life.
Not for me.
Because
I was on a plane.
Oh, that's right.
I had to watch it on an iPad on a plane with a stewardess like threatening to get the air marshal on me because I wouldn't put my iPad away while we were taking off.
I forgot about that. I forgot about your whole shit show that night. But to me, because I knew the team was going to be bad, I remember for 4 straight years we were in the finals, and it was like every other night I'm at a friend's house or at a party, drinking, watching basketball, having fun doing it. I loved every minute of it. But this year, the fact that I'm not in a bar or watching a game every other night is almost
bullshit. You are. in a bar every other night doing something. You
but I'm not watching a Cavs game.
So what the fuck?
All right. Anyway, sorry, didn't need to cut you off.
But I guess my thing is that so LeBron's not here. We're not in the playoffs. To me, that sucks because I would like to be in the playoffs. I'd like to be in the mix. It's nice to have national media here, people coming here, TNT, Charles Barkley, those guys here. I mean, it's
when they're doing the shots at downtown Cleveland,
right?
And they're showing restaurants
the energy in the city, right?
Agreed.
I mean,
Agreed.
you sneak out, you go grab some drinks somewhere, you go eat. And it just the energy in the city is amazing, and I love it. Right now, the Indians suck, the weather sucks, and all the city has to cling on to is the upcoming NFL season. Right. So the interesting thing is, LeBron doesn't make the playoffs going to the Lakers. First time he hasn't been in the playoffs in like 15 years. Kyrie Irving, who forced his way out of Cleveland, forces Cleveland to make this terrible trade with the Boston Celtics where we get a broken down player and, a pile of bricks.
Right.
Ends up out of the playoffs himself and really does nothing to make Boston that much better. They were in the playoffs last year with him, go to the conference finals. This year they're bounced in, after four straight losses to the Milwaukee Bucks. They didn't get swept because the Celtics won the first game. And Kyrie is back to his weird self, and it looks like he's out of Boston. So, all that being said, there's rumors, right, of LeBron being traded out of L.A.,
which would be fucking crazy.
Right. I mean, how would he respond to that? I mean, he's always been in a power position, and right now, position of power. Yeah, position of power. He's not in that position of power right now because he signed a 3 or 4 year contract, and the Lakers could trade him, right? And I don't think, and this is the first time, I believe this is the first time he had a no trade clause not in his contract, right? Like, so he had that, and then he gave that up when he signed with the Lakers, so he could be traded, and he has no control over it. It's interesting to watch from this end where we're not the ones involved in the drama, right? Like now, now the Lakers aren't going to trade him back to the Cavs because the Cavs just have nothing to trade. That they want.
I actually saw a predicted trade. It was like Tristan Thompson and J.R. Smith and someone else. I'm like, stop right now.
Right. I mean, you'd have to do. I mean, it would basically be Tristan Thompson, J.R. Smith, maybe probably Kevin Love,
and multiple first round picks for years to come.
Right. I mean, it's
not going to happen.
Right. But there's rumors that Kyrie wants to get back with LeBron. Right, because he realizes that things were a lot easier and a lot better when LeBron was around. Right, so there is a part of my mind that says, "Man, what if?
Get them both back here?
What if? What if we did maybe chip off a few pieces that we have that I believe or not? I mean, we have Kevin Love." And
a couple young guys.
Right, a couple young guys. J.R. Smith contract. I mean, no one wants J.R. Smith the player. They just want his contract because it's on the way out. Like, well, I don't know. Maybe can we get back in the mix, right? Like, I feel like that 80s guy, right? Who has a really... I feel like Dr. Massad with his meth
I was going to say, you sound like you've been hanging out with Dr. Massad, Dale Massad.
No, he was a doctor.
Oh, that's right. Well, that's right. He was a doctor until he wasn't anymore.
Right.
All right.
Until they took his license
away for smoking crack. That wasn't why, but yeah. Anyway, I don't see it happening, but it is kind of. It's interesting.
It's interesting to watch from afar, kind of the whole landscape start to shift because the question is going to be where's Kevin Durant going to go. Where is Kyrie going to go? What about Kawhi Leonard? All sorts of things.
The power structure of the NBA could change a lot. And mind you, there's still some really good basketball going on. I mean, Houston Golden State has been exciting.
But that's the thing about the NBA.
Philly and Toronto has been exciting.
For the last, it seems like maybe 6-7 years, what's been more talked about in the NBA is where people are going, what people are doing in terms of contract situations than the actual play. And I don't think the NBA hates that because it keeps people glued in.
Sure.
It keeps people on NBA.com going through the trade proposal thing and, the trade simulator, and it keeps people watching NBA TV, and it keeps people watching TNT, the NBA on TNT and all the NBA shows. How much they pay attention to the games, but they've got daily fantasy and FanDuel and DraftKings and all that stuff to kind of keep people lured into the game. So, I mean, it's just an interesting state that the NBA is in right now.
I agree. And I'm watching it casually. I'm not, glued to a TV every night, but I am still paying attention. As a Cleveland fan, my big thing is I don't want Golden State to win. And I think Houston had them on the ropes and doesn't anymore. It's 3-2.
Houston's not going to be the team to beat them. Well, Houston doesn't have the heart. James Harden doesn't have the heart. I think if anything happens, it would have to be obviously Golden State, or I'm sorry, the Nuggets, just because the Nuggets are kind of like a young team. They don't care. They don't seem to be fazed by much. They've got talent. Kevin Durant is hurt. We don't know how long he's going to be out. So if anyone's going to do it, I think it would be Denver, because I think that they just don't care enough to
I'd put Milwaukee in that same category.
Well, I'm just saying out of the West.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because my issue is if you give Kevin Durant that much time, right? Like, so if you give him the entire next series and then they make it to the finals, he'll probably be back. And once he's back, they're pretty unstoppable. But Denver could do it if there's no Kevin Durant for a series. Denver could do it because they may, I think they're just too young and dumb to know anything different. They're just like, well, you're just another team. We'll just go out and do what we do. So
we will see.
We shall see. All right, man.
Well, good talking to you. Yeah. Thanks for bringing a bottle of whiskey over.
Yes,
we're at Whiskey Congress on social media, Instagram and Twitter. We are Jim at Whiskey Congress and Steve at Whiskey Congress on email. Thank you for listening, and we are out of here.